I'm going to introduce our next keynote. It's from Google XI. Megan Henschel is the founder of Google Experience Institute, Google XI. And her work sits at the intersection of design, human needs, and cultural transformation. In her role leading partnerships for workplace experience at Google, she explores how intentional design shapes our perceptions, supports people through change, and forges connections. Megan is also the founder of a global interdisciplinary coalition called the Google Experience Institute and the chief impact officer of the New Project, a nonprofit focused on neuro-informed strategies and practices. Her colleague Ryan Howard, co-lead Google Experience Institute, is an experienced design and technology leader and co-lead of the Google Experience Institute. He specializes in the systems and strategic frameworks that help teams synchronize and focus on collective experiences that improve both human and business outcomes. At this point, I'd like to welcome to the stage Megan and Ryan.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. So I have to be honest, Ryan and I have been really nervous about what to wear today. We don't often get out of tech, experience design, athleisure world, and so we sort of agonized about what we were going to put on. And when we ran into each other in the lobby this morning, we were both sort of like, oh no, matching navy blazers, how embarrassing. So when we walked in, I felt so relieved because like navy blazers, that is the hot look in this room today. I think like 60% of our alliance around team intelligence are wearing navy blazers. We have to get a picture before we leave. So between that and the fact that the previous panel totally teed us up, we feel right at home and we're so excited to share what we've prepared for you today. So let's get into it. In 1973, NASA used computers to minute by minute schedule every single moment of the Skylab 4 mission. And from the perspective of mission control, they had created a flawless, efficient model for hyperproductivity. The problem was they treated the crew like cogs in a machine or mechanical nodes rather than biological entities. The result? Well, the crew, pictured here, turned off the radio and ignored mission control. So Ryan and I talk a lot about how organizations are just groups of people, often working on behalf of and with other people. And so it's fair to say that the ultimate engine of any enterprise is human will. And when the systems fail to design for humans, their pacing, their biological rhythms, their cognitive saturation points, just to name a few things, people either break or they opt out. They turn off the radio. So the Skylab 4 team teaches us a couple of really important lessons that we wanted to start with today. The first is that what may look like efficiency or productivity on paper can actually be a mirage if it conflicts with human biology. The second is when we over-index, those of us who have influence in system design, on individual tasks and hyper-efficient workflows, we're really disruptive to people trying to effectively work together. And so here we are, 50 years later, still very much trying to figure out how to integrate human intelligence and collective effort and machine intelligence. And in the last few years in our work, the rate of change and the pace of AI has raised a fundamental and urgent question for us. How can organizations design work and workplaces so that AI strengthens the human conditions that makes teams effective?
So a little bit about us, although you just heard a whole lot about us. At heart, we're experienced designers, and I'm going to guess we're the only people who call ourselves experienced designers here today.
Any others?
Oh,
Nice.
all right. For the rest of you, experience design is a very interdisciplinary design, meta-discipline in a sense. It's traditionally focused on designing things like theme park attractions, museums, brand activations, things like that. However, we view it as creating the right conditions to enable desirable human and business outcomes. And we're really explicitly focused on work-life in that sense. So because of that, we have to come at it in a different way. We think about it and act on it very scalably. And we're always looking for systemic blockers that we can try to remove or scalable strategies that we can use to improve work life. We do that in a large part by digging deep into how people work, how they will work in the future, and most importantly, how do they want to work? So XI is a research and innovation program that allows us to partner with brilliant folks from many different disciplines and many different areas of expertise that are well outside of our own, and well outside of Google in many cases, in most cases, in fact. And we believe it's important to bridge these disciplines and domains so that we can have a much more holistic conversation together. And in fact, for us, we look at the conversation as our most important business tool. Conversations lead to conversations, and better questions lead to better solutions. So our big focus now, and probably for the next 12 months or longer, is on teams. We want to ensure that we and other organizations understand the criticality of human-to-human deliberation and the collaboration between humans within this age of AI. And we want to demonstrate that there is systemic business value by illuminating this potency of team intelligence. In a traditional workplace, we might define team intelligence by aggregating all the individual IQs, resumes, and the specialized skills of the team members. But in an AI-saturated landscape, the individual answers are commoditized. Raw knowledge is commoditized. It's not the bottleneck we're facing. It's not really the big challenge we have to overcome. We're generating a lot of it. We just heard quite a bit about that. So we think that team intelligence is the big challenge we need to focus on. And we're defining it maybe a little differently than you've heard others define it in the past. We look at it as the coherence of practice among the team members. So it's essentially, how does the team move together, and what is their capacity to act as a single distributed organism? That's our that's our focus on it. And there are a few key aspects for that coherence that we want to talk about today. First, collective synchronization.
The Blazers is a perfect example. All the Blazers in the room.
Right. Collective synchronization is a bit like team telepathy. So it's this fluid, real-time ability of the team to adopt, to read the room, hello Blue Blazers, and adjust to changing conditions. We didn't lose this, without needing to stop and completely renegotiate how they work together. This is really critical to keep teams moving quickly. The other key aspect here we're touching on is deep context sharing. So this is unspoken shorthand or localized language, specialized language, inside jokes. Team intelligence really has little to do with the smartest person in the room or the fastest agent in the workflow. It's determined by this invisible harmony of how people move together, and especially when the script breaks. So if we only measure individual output, we're going to miss a whole lot of opportunity in this future competitive advantage of the collective mind. And so our work is to pivot organizational experience design and use experience design to design for a renewed focus on the health and effectiveness of those teams. These ideas are definitely drawing on our own lived experience inside of a company like Google, where it is already pretty close to being AI native. But in addition to that, we've been working with partners like HKS, members of the Global Brain Economy Initiative, and other key XI members that we've worked with over many years. And we've conducted a series of deep dive workshops, discovery calls with a lot of different subject matter experts, and a rigorous review of 127 different scientific articles, and I think 61 different industry articles. And yesterday, we co-hosted a workshop with a potential alliance that's going to be focused on how to kickstart further research and experimentation in this area, and we're trying to bring together academia, consulting, enterprise, so that we can work together to find these solutions that are truly actionable. So we're going to talk about a few of those challenges and opportunities now.
So synecdoche, I drew the short straw having to say that word on stage. Synecdoche, New York is a film where the lead character pursues an impossible project. It is also a figure of speech for when a part of something is used to represent its entirety or the whole. And in the movie, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character thinks that he can understand and make sense of the entire landscape of New York City, more importantly, his entire lived experience, by hyper-obsessing on the individual parts and players. And I can see why it's really tempting to take this approach, especially when we're looking at a massive and broad opportunity space like team intelligence in the age of AI, or a really complex problem statement. And I think that's why a lot of the future of work conversations today are very much leaning into synecdoche. They're focused on the individual tool, the individual person, often examining and designing for those parts, often doing so in disciplinary silos. But as Kaufman so beautifully put it in this quote, a story has to be about everyone, or it's not a story at all. And stories, both myth building and myth busting, are more important than they've ever been in this moment. Because as we all know, millions of new ones are being written and told by people through their own experiences about what this AI transformation is like every day. So we believe that we need better stories about work, and we need new workplace lore in the age of AI. And human experience is shaped by the stories that are passed between people, generations, cultures, and institutions. And lore is how people decide what matters. Workplaces are absolutely no different. Lore is deeply human, and it is a way that we can understand humans distinct from the work that they do or the tools that they use. It can be really strong connective tissue inside of organizations, not only to sense make, but to provide a grounding for shared ideas, values, norms, and challenges. And most importantly, it is how groups of people encode. It's how teams not only make sense of what happened or what's happening, but also what it all means. What is worth preserving? What needs to change? And what we believe about each other as people when things are hard and uncertain.
In the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone, which is called Where Is Everybody?, a man collapses into madness within a pristine, fully operational town that's completely devoid of people. And the plot twist here is that he's an astronaut trainee whose mind is snapped inside of a sensory deprivation chamber. And this is a stark reminder that while we can automate our environments, the human mind biologically rots without connection. It's definitely a warning to us that we risk starving off the very human ties that sustain team intelligence and make work enjoyable. The value and impact of AI is still dependent upon human-to-human collaboration. Business progress is still dependent upon human-to-human collaboration. When we treat this collaboration as modular or disposable, we lose the trust, the shared vocabulary, and the intuition that makes the extraordinary possible. And if we treat human partnerships as disposable or as something that they can simply be snapped together by algorithms, then we risk manufacturing our own isolation chambers. And we can see this when teams start talking to the engine versus talking to each other, because the outcome is not only quicker, it's more superficially polished, but it's also more individually affirming. So there's a bad feedback loop there. And we've seen this in our research. We've seen that there's a sense of grief already emerging for a loss of purpose from this rapid assimilation and adoption of this new technology. We're starting to bypass help seeking from other humans. We heard a bit about that just in the mental health zone. That eliminates those collaborative behaviors that organically build group memory and organizational trust. The human process of creation, messy debate, deep vulnerability, and shared dreams, it can't be replicated by AI. So we do think that solo heroes are valuable, but maybe a bit of a commodity, and that team effectiveness is this new frontier.
In 1953, Isaac Asimov wrote The Caves of Steel. And in this sci-fi story, the protagonist is a human detective named Elijah, and he's forced into this very awkward, anxious partnership with a humanoid robot. And this is science fiction, sure, but it's also a pretty accurate blueprint for our modern collective identity crisis and techno-insecurity around AI. And the truth is, AI is actually the most potent cognitive mirror we've ever had, we've ever built. It mirrors human language and logic and patterns, and it can feel startlingly, sometimes uncomfortably human. And it demands that we examine what actually makes us, us. And it forces us into a conversation together about our own standards. So the insight here is that we have to reject the false binary. Thinking of AI like a hammer is pretty reductive at this point, but thinking of it as a teammate feels a little hyperbolic. In the system architecture of modern teams, AI is definitely a new, very active node of a team. It functions as a memory bank, a shared resource, a critic, a thought partner, and sometimes an evaluator, but it is not human. And it lacks the relational intelligence and accountability to be a true teammate. So when an organization fails to define the precise operational role of AI, when it becomes this like weird ghost team member to a team, we pay a steep cognitive price. And this ambiguity leads to massive coordination debts for collectives working on things together. And in fact, we found in the research that the verification burden on human workers increases 35%. But the scariest thing, the deepest danger of what it does to our collective minds to overly humanize AI as a teammate, is that we risk blindly treating it as an oracle. And this can lead to cognitive stiffness over time. And so teams that fail to be accountable to one another and interrogate and challenge machine output suffer a devastating 89% drop in collective cognitive flexibility. Ultimately, we're sacrificing our capacity to think critically and deliberatively together in exchange for a really easy, polished answer.
All right. Pop quiz hot shot. There's a bomb on a bus. Once the bus goes 50 miles an hour, the bomb is armed. If it drops below 50, it blows up. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? This was the bad guy in the movie Speed, if anybody remembers that. And we like to think that teams could have disarmed this bomb, as they did in the movie, and de-weaponized time in this case. But maybe an AI-augmented individual might not have been so lucky. Industry and marketing is really advocating and celebrating this rapid workflow acceleration that's coming from AI. But scientific research is warning that there are speed traps and there are organizational risks. So speed without direction can erode shared mental models, transactive memory systems, the quality of collaborative disagreement, and the organic cross-generational mentoring loops that keep an organization durable over time. Moving too fast shorts the circuit on good friction, causing teams to rush past creative divergence, perspective taking, and necessary error correction. And driving pedal to the metal under the guise of high-performance culture often backfires into a highly performative culture. And instead of executing deep critical thinking, teams prioritize rapid turnaround, metric compliance, and they create this hollow illusion of progress. And we all know that speed and urgency, those are true existential requirements inside of nearly every organization. But just like in the movie, we think that those are solved through teamwork and not necessarily through solo heroics. And it's important to see that speed, how fast we move, is the output of the machine. It's a byproduct of the machine, but velocity, how fast we move together and in what direction, that's an output and product of the team.
So what? All of this illuminates some of what we've learned and starts to spotlight a really massive opportunity space for intervention and impact. And truly, we are only at the beginning of understanding what this could mean for organizations and anyone who works with other people in their lives. One of the reasons that we have come to love the brain economy, brain health, brain capital narrative so much is that we believe it can be an interdisciplinary platform that makes calibrating for humans, human health, human intelligence, and human potential really obvious and non-negotiable. And for Ryan and I, that's really always been our mission. That's why we're at Google. We believe that work is a team sport. I think we've made that pretty clear in our presentation here. But the good news is the research also supports that. And we have mountains of anecdotal evidence that the only thing you can truly excel at inside of a complex organization alone is creating confusion and chaos. We know that AI is putting a very fine point on that in real time. And so we're here today because we think it's important to extend the brain economy, brain health, brain capital narrative beyond individuals and beyond designing the technology itself to designing for and fiercely protecting the cognitive capital of collectives and teams. So that's the mission. We are moving from sort of insight into impact and action. And the goal here is to translate team intelligence into something quantifiable that demonstrates clear enterprise value. So with our friends, we seek to make this relevant and actionable to business leaders. And like all of our work at XI, this will be a blend of science and art, data, and embodied experimentation. And we're imagining a number of legacies for this work, like how might this prevent cognitive depreciation in organizations over time? How might it reduce slop and homogeneity? How might it lead to happier people, more engaged employees, and healthier people, less burnout in work? How might we avoid some of the more dystopian and seriously undesirable futures for people in the workplace? And ultimately, how could something like team intelligence impact the ultimate return of investment on AI to begin with? So for some initial outcomes, we are full steam ahead on a paper that we will be publishing in conjunction with the UNGA in September in New York. That will be a research-backed position paper, sort of positioning team intelligence as the primary next-generation competitive edge for organizations. Simultaneously, we're working on bringing some additional ideas to life.
We need improved metrics that deepen the ROI conversation. While efficiency and productivity are important signals, the insights that we've uncovered and talked about a bit show that we need to build a more holistic data model, and we need to define measurable upstream inputs that are related to human needs and cognitive care in order to really ensure organizational success, health, and durability. Some of the things we'd like to understand are output quality of the team, trust calibration within the team, social connection within the team, idea diversity and flow, handoff rework, how often do we need to take output and do something else with it again and reprocess it, perceived ownership of that output so that everyone feels that they've contributed, residual knowledge that carries forward to the next engagement and next effort, and then how ready is the team for the next collaboration in the future. As an example of something actionable from this, we are thinking about this idea of a team intelligence operating system. And this would be a framework for creating the conditions that enable peak team performance over time, and it's a bit like a computer operating system. It breaks down subsystems such as purpose and mission, structure and context, team norms, workplace lore, team spaces, tooling and AI nodes, and incentive structures. This is just our first stab at trying to identify what that would look like. But all of these subsystems have to work together. They have to be orchestrated in order to create those conditions that we're seeking.
So back to our friends at Skylab 4. This is actually a quote from Mission Commander Gerald Carr. He said, "They treated us like a production line, and you just can't treat a crew of thinkers that way." And after the Skylab 4 crew landed back on Earth, the press had a literal field day with their story. And the headlines were all, "It was a mutiny, they turned off the radio, they went on strike." But this was not at all the crew's version of events and what had happened. Their truth was that they simply needed to reduce the noise and prioritize their individual and team needs in order to complete the assignment intelligently and to their own standards as a group. They weren't rebelling. It wasn't a mutiny. They were actually intelligently adapting as a unit, moving together in order to get the job done. And so, to be very clear, we are pro-AI. We use it. We are AI pragmatists. We simply want to design its use from the human relationship in the center outward. And so the questions we keep coming back to again and again, so what are we gaining from new ways of working with AI versus what are we at risk of losing if we are unwilling to adapt, like the Sky Lab 4 crew? And back to the importance of story and lore and owning our own story. In 3 years, will that story be one that we wrote or one that wrote us as organizations?
All right, thank you for your time. If you want to chat more about that alliance, please find us, and we're happy to chat.
Appreciate your attention. Take care.